So how many of you have actually worn a headset before, tried it out? Good number. The rest of you will at some point. And when you do, the first time you don one of these headsets, it's amazing. You're in a world that doesn't exist. It can be Mars, it can be an aquarium, it can be anything. But the novelty really wears off pretty quick because you can't interact with it. You can see this glorious landscape, but you can't touch it. We're tactile beings. We need to interact with things. Companies know this. That's one of the reasons that they're both so interested in the potential for VR, but so limited in how they use it. You can imagine that a firefighter or a nuclear operator or a pilot could train with one of these things and replace a huge physical simulator. But unless you can interact with things, it's really worthless. And that's where HaptX comes in. We're building a pair of gloves that essentially have tactile pixels. So if you can imagine being able to accurately replicate the same interaction you'd have if you're grabbing a coffee mug or a control stick or any object. It presses into your skin just the exact same way that object would. It stops your hand from going through a coffee cup that isn't there. So when you interact with things that you see in this headset, it feels like you're touching them. You can imagine this is an amazing technology, and we're directed squarely at the enterprise market, the companies that want to use this for training. We've been very quiet for the last 4 or 5 years up on Broad Street. We have about 30 engineers up there. And this last week has been a real inflection point because we've shifted from prototype mode into actual commercialization. We released our first development kit. We can only make 3 of these this summer. They're very precious, but they're going to supply a list that includes over 100 Fortune 500 companies who have signed up already to get access to these. And this is just the first step. It goes beyond just hands to a whole body. And if you can imagine getting a little wacky out there, being able to strap into an apparatus where you can't tell the difference between the real world and the virtual world. That's where we're headed. And it's a rocket ship, let me tell you. It's a little terrifying, what we have to accomplish. But to this group, I really want to, as part of that message, express that while this is definitely a success story in the making, it's a local success story in the making. The start of this was from Seattle. My co-founder's from Seattle. A lot of the early investment was in Seattle. The mindset was, well, we'll work with this wacky professor down in San Luis Obispo, and then when the prototyping's done, we'll move it back to the real city. I'll tell you, through a combination of Cal Poly's very progressive intellectual property policies, through the technology park, through the workforce that's down here, through the much more reasonable access to infrastructure than in the urban area, to investment that's local investment to the tune of north of $1 million, to the local firefighters who have been participating in one of our early demonstrations for industrial training, to the SBDC and the EVC and the Chamber of Commerce, who's been, really had our backs. I will tell you that the mind shifted from let's move from San Luis Obispo to a real city to don't go anywhere. So we're here to stay, and it's a real exciting project. Thank you.